So we're summoning the self. We're trying to train ourselves how to show up for ourselves, how to show up for the people in our lives that we care about. Why is this even necessary? Like, where's this self gone? If we're codependents because we've been entrained to annihilate the self, where is it? Where's it gone? And then what can we do about it? So let's look at, this is a metaphor, obviously, but the metaphor that I'm going to give you makes the prescriptive solutions meaningful. So let's say that whether you were a child when this took place, or whether you were an adult when the trauma that led you to being in a state of codependency, so it's trauma, and this trauma led to a state of codependency, people-pleasing, pronounced fawning response. Whether you were a child or an adult, the nature of the trauma was so all-encompassing that even if you were an adult, it infantilized you. So by encompassing, I mean you're living with the person and they have power over you. So in sexual relationships, because we tend to, when we've pair bonded with somebody, we often will live with them. These become all-encompassing. You're sleeping with them, you're eating with them, you go about your practical daily business with them. It's all-encompassing. So we don't need at this point to do a course for people who were entrained into codependency in childhood and a course for people who are entrained in adolescence and in adulthood. It's the same thing. What was the nature of this all-encompassing trauma? Well, because it was all-encompassing, you could not escape. And in terms of the CPTSD, if you're not familiar with these terms, there is a free course I offer on YouTube called the Fortress Mental Health Protection System, where all of these terms, as defined by Pete Walker, are explained. So you could not fight. You could not flight. These are both action responses. So you couldn't fight and you couldn't flight. You couldn't run away. There wasn't an option. Fighting back, not an option. So you just freeze and fawn over and over and over and over again, whether in adulthood or whether in childhood. So imagine you have a predator. I'm going to draw a little devil because this is a human predator. And they are attacking a prey. And the prey can't escape, nor can they fight back. So whether they're a child or an adult, what do? I think over time, what happens, there's two parts to this. The first part is very simple, so we'll deal with that first, is you start to recede the self. You start to switch the self off. If you're being hit and hurt and it doesn't stop and you can't punch the person who's doing it and you can't run away from them, you start to deaden the limbs. You just disassociate from the pain, from the experience. And so in a sense, codependency is as much of a freezing response as it is a fawning response. So you're actually freezing out the self. All the parts of you that hurt, you freeze out, you numb out. So you're numbing and you're withdrawing and you're pulling back. So this entity starts at the psychological level to withdraw into a cave of disassociation and numbness. And at first, what they'll do is the back wall of the cave, is they go into the cave and they hide in there, but the predator comes in and gets them. So they shrink themselves down until they're very, very small, but the predator still comes in and finds them. So they shrink themselves down, make themselves tiny and small, and then invisible, and then they hide in a crack at the back of the cave. So think of it this way: under conditions of no escape and perpetual ongoing abuse, I shrink and shrink and dissociate and dissociate and invisibilize myself. This is the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to invisibilize myself. I'm going to shrink back and shrink back and shrink back. And then I'm going to go not just into my cave, but into a crack in the cave at the very, very back. And that's now my authentic self. Shrunken, invisible, and hidden, and kept away from the real world. That's part one. Part two is I make a decoy, a straw man or a straw woman, like a little Guy Fawkes. Oh, if you're not British, you wouldn't do that. A doll, if you like, or a scarecrow, a simulacrum of a human being, so that the predator can eat. But I leave that at the mouth of the cave as my sacrifice. This is my fawning response. I give you this so that you don't eat me. This is where I fawn. So I've given you a doll or a decoy to consume, and then the predator walks away satiated. They have dominated you. They have abused you. They've proven their superiority to you, and they walk away full, like a tick that is full of blood, or a mosquito full of blood. They walk away full, proud, arrogant. Ha, I showed you. But actually, secretly, the codependent knows, the joke is on you, because you didn't eat me. You ate the decoy. I am safe back here. But over time, the more you live like this, the more you get used to living like this, I think it becomes addictive, because there are advantages to all of this that we rewire to. Like, less is expected of you. Other predators in the environment leave you alone because you're not a threat. You don't expect as much of yourself. Other people don't expect as much of you. You don't expect as much of yourself. The tribe, culture, society stops expecting much of you. And you end up kind of a funny, bumbling idiot. That's the decoy. That's your pretend self. I'm not even worth, don't hit me, master. I'm not even worth your attention. I'm such a bumbling buffoon. So you get a lot of people with CPTSD walking around like this, where they just act in a way that's extremely emotionally immature, silly, guffawing, reaction seeking. It's quite annoying. I find it very annoying, even though I've done it myself. Perhaps that's why I find it so annoying, because I can see parts of my old self that I didn't like in other people doing that. Plus, it's disingenuous, and I have a real problem with disingenuity. I don't like people being dishonest. I don't like people being false. And I don't like the idea that somebody would think that that had been something that would convince me. Like, here's me pretending I'm all silly Billy, chatting nonsense, babbling away, and not taking myself seriously and not taking you or anything else seriously, so that I can't be eaten. It annoys me. It's an irritant, perhaps, to use the lingo. It's a trigger for me. I'm like, God, that's really irritating. But it's the decoy that's in operation. It's not the authentic self. So what I'm claiming here is that being an invisible entity, this sort of looks like a fish, doesn't it? That's the fish's eye. There's its lips. This invisibilizing of the self is addictive, because now I don't have to do as much, because it's frightening and hard to show up as an adult. It's frightening and hard to ask for what I want. It's frightening and hard if I show up as who I really am, not as a decoy. And I go, well, this is who I really am and this is what I really want. And you say no, you're saying no to what I really want. You're saying no to who I really am, which actually is a good thing. It's far healthier. It's far superior to what codependents do, which is we pretend we want a thing that we don't really want, so we avoid the rejection. So if that gets rejected, I didn't really want it anyway. And we're pretending to be somebody else other than who we really are. So if that false self gets rejected, well, that's not even me anyway. I'm still safe in inverted commas, being invisible, not even being a person anymore. So when I'm talking about the abrogation of responsibility of being the self, all of this is keeping me safe, air quotes, from the responsibility and weight and burden of being a present human adult. But all the pleasure in life and all the satisfaction in life and the fulfillment in life and the purpose in life comes with the rights that go hand in hand with this responsibility of being an adult and able to live on your terms as you would choose it. So what is our job? Our job is to learn to let go of the false self, to learn to let go of this mode of being that permits us the abrogation of responsibility. We have to learn to let go of all the advantages of that. And then we have to summon the self that's in the back here to come back into the cave, to grow in size, to cease to be invisible, to have color, and to have some vibrancy, and to let the blood that we stopped feeling, the blood needs to come back, and the feelings need to come back, and that might be a painful process. And then we need, finally, to leave the cave. So we have to abandon the false. Then we need to become visible. And then we have to leave the cave. The cave is yin. It's safety, it's comfort. Everybody should have a cave. Everybody should be able to dissociate every once in a while. Of course, we all need to sleep. That's yin. We should all have a cave, absolutely. But you shouldn't live there all the time. If you don't want to be visible, you don't want to be visible all the time, you're having a little introverted moment, that's fine. But you don't want to compulsively be forced to live like this at all times, because it doesn't work. And you know this. You're watching this course because you've had the experience of trying to move forward and feeling like the brakes on the car are on. So you're putting your foot on the gas and you're putting the brakes on at the same time, because these all become unconscious rules. I must be invisible. And then you'll say to me, how can I be a successful public speaker? And I'll say, well, if you're living from an unconscious rule that you must be invisible, never. How can I run a successful business? Well, if you can never ask for what you want because you're never being your authentic self, how the hell are you going to set up a business and run it successfully? You're not. It's just not going to happen. No amount of hypnosis, no amount of therapy, no amount of pump up, rah, rah, yeah, yeah, let's go sales talks is going to help you, because you're running unconscious protocols and beliefs that say that this is all verboten. This is haram. Coming out of the cave is danger. Outside of the cave is yang. So the yin is dark, safe, a place of healing, a place of rest. But outside in the world, where we have our rights and our agency and sovereignty, we're in the sun. We're visible, we're present, we're here, and we're at risk. So we have to also learn to let go of our compulsive clinging to safety and agreeableness and passivity that goes with that. Am I still in shot there? Yep. Into risk. And therefore you need to compete, and you need to be potentially assertive, and you need to be potentially disagreeable when we move into that space. Okay, that's it. I hope that makes sense. And we start getting in some of the exercises now. Thank you for your time and your attention, and I look forward to speaking to you in the next section. Cheers.